You're welcome to the Naija Filmmaker, a podcast about Nigerian filmmakers, their films, and how we can build a diverse and functional industry. I'm your host, Selegot. On this episode, my guest is Desmond Ovbiagele, a writer and director. He made Render To Ceasar, which he wrote and co-directed, and The Milkmaid, which he also wrote and directed. In 2021, The Milkmaid was submitted to the International Feature category for the Academy Award. We talk about the inspiration behind The Milkmaid, challenges faced during filming, and how producers can raise more funding. If you're a new listener, you're welcome, and I hope you enjoy. Hi Desmond, you're welcome to the Naija Filmmaker.
Hello, hi. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so can you introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Desmond Ovbiagele, and I guess I'm into making movies.
Going back to your childhood, do you remember any films that were, remarkable in your childhood?
Yeah, interesting question. I do remember certain movies that I did watch when I was much younger. At that time, they were actually showing movies in National Theatre.
Yeah.
National Theatre was actually acting as a cinema house in Lagos at that time. So I remember watching a number of movies. Star Trek, I watched at National Theatre when I was a child. I also watched a film called A Bridge Too Far. And just as notably, I remember watching Superman the movie.
And as a kid, what were the thoughts going through your head when you were watching these films?
Well, I watched them as a consumer. I didn't watch them with any other interest. I basically was brought there, I guess, by my parents for the experience. And, by and large, I generally enjoyed it. I enjoyed the storylines and all that. And, I guess maybe that's imbibed in me the feeling up to today, notwithstanding the preponderance of streaming services, that nothing quite beats the big screen.
Yeah. Okay. So let's fast forward. Let's fast forward to university. So what did you study at university?
I completed my undergraduate degree in business administration.
Okay. And I read that you started a career in investment banking.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, as a consequence of my course of study at university, I guess a natural destination was a career in some aspect of business, and I happened to find myself in financial services, as you said, with investment banking.
Okay. You decided to leave this career in investment banking to do films. Like what kind of formed that decision to leave the banking industry?
Well, I guess it was a desire to explore other aspects of my persona, which the world of investment banking wasn't created to give expression to. I had some inclinations towards the art. I enjoyed watching movies, but at some point I felt I needed to put my hat in the ring, so to speak, and express some of my own thoughts and ideas in terms of filmmaking. So I couldn't very well do that side by side with a day job in financial services, and that led me to take a decision as to whether to stay or whether to go out and explore these inclinations, and I chose the latter.
Okay, so immediately you quit banking. What was the first thing you did to kind of bring yourself up to speed with the craft of filmmaking?
Well, in my latter stages of banking, although I obviously wasn't able to explore filmmaking full time, what I could do and did do, with some of my, relatively spare time in the banking industry, was to write scripts. So I would come in early in the morning and, pen off a few pages before work starts, and then after that, I get to what was paying my bills. But I did that fairly consistently in the last couple of years before I started banking, and I guess that helped to smoothen the transition from where I was coming from to where I wanted to get to.
I saw that you were kind of a director producer for Render to Ceasar. Was that your first foray into actually making a film?
Yes, Render to Ceasar was my first endeavor in the filmmaking world. I wrote the script, I produced a film, and was more of a co-director really, as opposed to a director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And generally, how did that production go, and what were, some of the memorable lessons you learned from that experience?
Well, the production, being my first feature, I wasn't trying to be too adventurous, so I shot within a fairly restricted series of locations. That notwithstanding, the script was still a bit ambitious. So, and obviously being my first time, it was a challenge realizing what one considered to be the potential of the script in terms of story and in terms of theme, and particularly at the quality level, and one was desiring to pitch the film at. We shot in quite a number of locations, some of which were not necessarily ready at the time we would have liked to start shooting. So it was quite often a battle, trying to identify where to shoot next while trying to get the other locations secured. What lessons learned in terms of producing, and even sometimes you write a script and you write more scenes than are strictly necessary to tell the story. And we ended up shooting quite a number of scenes that didn't make it into the final cut. So it was also a very, very valuable lesson from a writing perspective as well.
This film went on to be selected for FESPACO in 2015 and the Pan-African Film Festival. How was, how were those experiences?
I mean, those are great experiences. Obviously, two different kinds of film festival. Pan-African Film Festival in Los Angeles, largely celebratory of African American cinema, with a smattering of African cinema, and it was an opportunity to be in Los Angeles and to interact with Black America and watch, their perspectives and their narratives on life, so that was interesting. FESPACO, Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, quite different, much more of an art house feel, primarily focused on African cinema, and being exposed to, probably a different style of filmmaking from what we're accustomed to here in Nigeria. Not as overtly commercial in terms of their themes, a bit more elliptical and more atmospheric in terms of how they tell their stories. But having said that, also seeing their attention to production value, and being able to learn from that in terms of not compromising on key aspects of the production.
Okay. All right. So it was another 6 years before you made your next feature. So what were you doing in these 6 years?
Well, I was basically recovering from the experience of having made a first film and trying to identify what my next project would be.
And when did the inspiration come for the Milkmaid?
Well, something around 2017. Obviously, living in Nigeria, quite aware of the phenomenon of, insurgency and its impact on the country, primarily in the northeastern part of the country. Seeing the reports, hearing about the news stories. This, of course, was in the aftermath of the kidnapping of the Chibok girls, and how that turned out and everything. And then, having a realization, obviously, that as filmmakers, as an industry, we hadn't addressed this phenomenon that had gotten global attention and was happening and continued to happen right in our backyard. And of course, as filmmakers, we can't very well hold ourselves out as being responsible narrators of our little corner of the world if we're not commenting on what every media outlet, locally and internationally, was talking about almost on a daily basis. So I felt that it was incumbent on us to be able to tell our side, share our perspective on what was going on, and that led to the project, The Milkmaid.
Okay. And how much research, went into making this story like really authentic to what was happening concerning insurgency in the North?
Well, a lot of research had to go into it. I mean, I don't live in the North. I've never lived in the North. I was neither a victim of terrorism nor a perpetrator of terrorism. So I absolutely needed to immerse myself in that world if I stood any chance of telling a story that carried, a mantle of authority and integrity, and authenticity, to the characters in that world that I was trying to portray. So that needed a lot of research, needed to read, the accounts of survivors of terrorism, what they went through, how their lives were before they were, impacted by extremists, and how their lives were turning out, for those who are fortunate enough to survive captivity. And in one or two cases, actually had access to some survivors of terrorism who had made their way down from Borno State to Lagos, where I was located, and had the opportunity to engage them and to see who are these people, who had been through such traumatic experiences in our country. I was still standing.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's get into the production of The Milkmaid. Where was it shot?
The Milkmaid was shot in Taraba State, northeastern Nigeria. It was shot primarily in 3 locations in the state. It was shot in the state capital, Jalingo, and we shot in one of the provinces called Gashaka, which is home to one of the largest, wildlife park or natural reserve in Nigeria, called the Gashaka County, National Park, and also shot on the Mambila Plateau.
Okay. For you, why? Especially the Mambila Plateau, it's kind of remote, and it could be like a bit challenging, for logistics and all that. But why did you decide to, go with this particular location?
Well, I had originally intended to shoot in Jos, which tends to serve as the de facto landscape for anywhere in the north in Nigeria, and has done so quite well for several films in the past. But I happened to come across some pictures of Mambila Plateau on the internet, and I didn't believe that was Nigeria, because although I'm a full-grown adult, I'd never seen anywhere in Nigeria or heard of anywhere in Nigeria that looked that beautiful. And someone assured me that those pictures are actually real, and if I doubted it, I should go out to Taraba State myself and check it out. So I persuaded my production designer, Pat Nabel, to accompany me on a reconnaissance trip to Taraba State, and we went up to Mambila Plateau, and we were both blown away with an absolutely breathtaking topography was there. And given that I wasn't aware of any film that had shot, and rendered those sort of images to the Nigerian public, I thought it was a great opportunity to incorporate those visuals and that landscape into our film, into the story of our film. I wanted the opportunity to be able to showcase that region, that territory, that beauty, not just to Nigerians, but hopefully to an international audience as well.
How long did it take to shoot the film?
I think longer than we hoped for or expected it to. It took about 3 months to shoot the Milkmaid.
I mean, I think that could probably be the, longest time a feature film has been shot for in Nigeria, possibly.
No, I don't think so. I can certainly name another feature film that took longer, but I don't necessarily need to mention names. But certainly I remember when I was shooting my first film, rendered To Ceasar, I remember another feature film which was shot for quite a long time. I think it was about 4 or 5 months. But then I think, they mobilized, shot some scenes, and then they had a break and they came back. But yeah, 3 months for the Milkmaid was certainly quite long. And, and that was not without its impact on us financially and even physically as well, because none of us had planned to be out there in Taraba State for that.
Yeah. So you guys weren't planning to be out that long. For you, was there a point that you saw that the crew were, getting a bit fatigued, maybe with the environment or just with the, effort that went into the shoots? And how did you try to raise their spirits and all?
Well, I mean, there was no doubt that the extended shooting time, had an impact on everybody. It was physically very demanding, very draining. People were dislocated from their bases around the country. Some even flew in from outside the country.
Yeah.
And we were in the trenches, so to speak. It wasn't easy, and there were naturally some moments that were difficult for everybody, individually and collectively as well. But we managed to get through it. I think many, I have to appreciate the resilience of my crew, because it was a tough time. But I was very heartened by their work ethic and by their mentality that, look, we are filmmakers. This is what we do. If the going gets rough, as they say, or if the going gets tough, the tough get going. And that was the attitude. And to be honest, I didn't really have to do that much motivating and encouraging. For whatever reason, they came with the mindset that, yes, things are tough, not going as we anticipated, but this is what we do as filmmakers. It is our job to see this thing through. We didn't come here to make a half film. We came here to make a complete film and move on. And that's what they did.
Yeah. And I read that you work with a number of, would I say, non-actors or first-time actors?
Yes, that is correct. I would probably say 98, 99% of the cast were non-actors, because we're shooting Taraba State, and 99% of the cast were drawn from the local, filmmaking community, in quote, who effectively are people who dabble into filmmaking, but that is very far from being their mainstay. Some of my lead characters were actually vigilantes or hunters in real life, and just dabbled into filmmaking, as an expression of their desires and inclinations.
Yeah. And how was it working with them? Do you find it particularly easy?
I think it helped that we shot in Hausa language. So they were speaking a language that they were accustomed to. And the story, which we tried to, as much as possible in casting, put round pegs in round holes, and I think that helped in terms of they being able to interpret their characters with a great amount of authenticity. The story was not a story that they were familiar with. They were fully aware, obviously, living in the north, of the insecurity situation. And I think to a certain extent, they appreciated the necessity of being able to portray such characters and portray such stories. You understand? So, and I think they were also quite gratified. This was the first time a production of this sort of scale, of this magnitude, was coming to their state.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of enthusiasm really to be involved in the production.
Okay. So what were some of the other challenges that you encountered, that slowed the, completion of the film?
One of them was the language we shot in. We shot in the Hausa language. And the reason we shot in Hausa was that we were striving for as much authenticity as possible.
Yeah.
By virtue of the fact that we shot in the Hausa language, and because I and a large number of my crew did not speak Hausa, that meant needing to communicate through a translator in English and then have that translator convert my directions into Hausa to the recipients of that direction. So that probably made us take twice as much time to shoot every scene as it would have if we were shooting in English. So that cost obviously a lot of time to do that, for the story. In addition to that, we shot during the rainy season in Taraba State. And for a film like ours that had a lot of external scenes, that meant we were exposed to a lot of interruptions, thunder sandstorms that take place in Taraba State. And we had to stand down quite a number of times we were about to start shooting to get our shots. So that also took some time. And then we had some delays. There were some security challenges we had. Our crew bus was detained somewhere in the east when it was en route to location to enable us to start shooting the film for the first time. And we had to spend about a week, trying to unravel out of court before they could join us to commence shooting. So these are another issue of the things that made us take quite some time to shoot.
Okay. You mentioned that, you worked with Pat Nebo. He's probably the, leading production designer in Nigeria, and your DOP was also Yinka Edward. How was he having these kind of seasoned professionals on your shoots? How did he help your process?
So working with seasoned hands like Pat Nebo as production designer and Yinka Edward as cinematographer, they got a lot of experience, and they bring much more than that, to a film set. They bring all manner of ability to assist even in other areas of production, not necessarily related to theirs. So that was much appreciated. But speaking directly of their own departments, as I said, they are top-notch. Pat Nebo, he trained in his career in Italy, very, very creative, able to fashion, a great amount of detail out of what looks like absolutely nothing, and he really took the bull by the horns in Taraba State, engaging the local people to try and, create, a physical fabric, that was authentic to the culture of the characters. Was very, very important. Yinka Edwards, fantastic, director of photography, shot, these very, very impactful images with Arri Alexa Mini. We used, very expensive lenses as well, but a lot of that was, recommended, to enable us, tell a very impactful story. And he's someone who is very meticulous when it comes to the visual image that is put up on screen, and I certainly, the production benefited, from having someone who doesn't cut corners, ensuring that we have the absolute best quality picture possible.
Okay. Moving to post-production, how long did that process take?
Well, post-production took several months. Because as I said, we shot in Hausa, there were a number of instances where what we encountered in post-production was different from what was written in the script, and that was not identified during shooting because of that language barrier. But it was only in post-production that some of those issues were identified, and we had to recall some of the cast to come and correct those anomalies. So there was a bit of back and forth with that in post-production, and it took some time before we got a cut of the film that everybody was satisfied with. But at the end of the day, we got there.
So can you talk about the reception of The Milkmaid at the cinemas? Like, you wanted to tell the story of often misunderstood, citizens of Nigeria. Sometimes we only hear like the news headlines that a number of people have been killed. So like once you told the story, like how did Nigerians react to it? How's the reception?
It's been largely positive. We've been gratified by people who, say that, they've gained far more of an understanding and appreciation of the issues and the characters involved after watching the film, which was our intention. It was very important for us that as local filmmakers, we're able to tell this story and not have this story told to us by filmmakers who are not from Nigeria. Of course, they're perfectly entitled, to comment on any area of the world. But it would be a shame for us if we are bragging that we are the most, prodigious filmmaking industry by output in the world, even more than Hollywood, but yet we have no stories commenting on what's going on in our backyard. So I thought it was important for us as filmmakers, local filmmakers, to tell our stories, and give our own perspective on what's going on. And we tried to do that. We did do that. And we certainly have received comments of appreciation, both locally and internationally as well.
Okay. And, the film, I think it hit the hurdle when it went to the Film and Video Censors Board. So the version of it that is on Prime Video, is it the director's cut or is that the Censors Board's cut?
Well, I don't want to confirm or use the terminology director's cut or Censors Board cut. All I would say is that what we have on Prime Video represents the story we're trying to tell. We have no issues with what is there. Yeah.
Okay. It was considered by the Nigerian Oscar Selection Committee, and they voted in favor of The Milkmaid representing Nigeria at the Oscars in 2020. How did that make you feel?
Well, obviously, I felt very gratified, very humbled, very appreciative, obviously, to the selection committee for choosing us to represent the country at the Oscars. And also happy for Nigeria. We've never had a film, competing for this award, for any award at the Oscars. This was the first time that a film from Nigeria has an opportunity to rub shoulders with its contemporaries from other filmmaking industries globally. So I was happy for us as a production. I was happy for Nigeria as a country. It was, and also happy particularly for my cast and crew, who, as I said before, had sacrificed to see this film get treated, under very challenging circumstances. So for them to at least have this recognition of their efforts in this very high-profile way, I'm very appreciative.
Okay. So the Nigerian film industry has come a long way, and there's still a long way to go. For you, what do you think should be a priority in, improving what the Nigerian film industry produces and sends out into the world? What do you think we should focus on improving?
Well, I think all across the board, there are areas for improvement. We've come a long way from the starting of the industry in the early 90s. We've seen virtually every aspect of production, go to the next level. But as you said, of course, there's always room for improvement. And what I'd like us to do and to be is to remain humble, to remain teachable, and to continue to learn and to improve, not to rest on our oars and assume that we have arrived and no one can tell us anything. The world is not stagnant. Things continue to move, to improve. New technologies come on board. New ways to tell stories come on board, and it's important that we keep up, with global trends and use these trends to help us tell our stories in more powerful and impactful ways.
Okay. Coming from investment banking, how do you think Nigerian producers can, set up their projects to be attractive, investment opportunities for bankers or private individuals?
Well, it's even abroad in Hollywood, setting up projects to attract finance is never easy. Just because of the nature of the industry, it's one in which there is, some degree of risk in terms of the investment, relative to other alternatives, as investment vehicles. So we need to provide to potential investors as much transparency as possible in terms of our projects. We need to be able to give them all the tools that they need to be able to take informed decisions that they are comfortable with, hopefully favorable to what we're asking them to do. So when it comes to things like box office figures of not just our projects, but also of other projects that they can use as the yardstick, we need to ensure as an industry that as much as possible that is available for third parties to be able to review. When it comes to things like budgets, we need to ensure that those also are as detailed as possible, so that, people don't have a false impression of what it's going to cost, for them to get involved in our projects. And then when it comes to even things like, streaming services, which obviously is frequently the destination of many films these days, it's good for there to be as much information available as possible as to how much investors stand to earn as a return. If what you're asking them to invest in goes in that direction, you understand. So the more information that's made available to potential investors, the better it can only be, for us as producers in the filmmaking industry.
Okay. So are you working on any new films?
Well, I have a number of ideas that I am currently trying to develop to a stage where I can attract, the requisite, investment as well as collaborators on the creative and technical side. But I am still in the very early stages of that.
Okay. Where can people keep up with news about anything you're working on? Do you have social media, a website?
Yes, we do have a website. Website is www.danonomedia.com. That's DANONOMEDIA.com. And we try to definitely post any new developments in terms of what we are doing as a production company there. And social media, I'm primarily on Instagram with my name, Desmond Ovbiagele. So I guess if you typed in Desmond Ovbiagele into the search engine of Instagram, you should find my account there. And I also try to post any relevant developments that are happening with me professionally.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, Desmond, for coming on the Naija Filmmaker.
Thank you very much, Sela. Thank you for having me.
We have come to the end of this episode. Remember to rate and review the podcast. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Selego Film, and the podcast at the Naija Film Pod to share your feedback. You can now support the podcast by visiting the website to donate. See you on the next episode. Have a good one.